Welcome to this edition of In-Depth Alaska. I'm Tracy Sinclair. After word of the temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas came through, we spoke with Abram Goodstein, rabbi at Congregation Beth Shalom, and Heather Barbour, a family lawyer and a leader in the Arab community in Anchorage. We wanted to get their opinions on the ceasefire. Here's an extended version of those conversations.
Obviously, I'm sure you've heard the breaking news. It's the story of the day. What is your initial reaction to the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal?
Oh man, I'm all over the place, right? So, first of all, excitement. Like, yes, the ceasefire is so important to move forward, but trepidation because throughout Israel's history, we've had lots of ceasefire deals, and not all of them have worked out. And so, just because we have this moment, this really great moment of looking like there is going to be a ceasefire, in no ways means that the ceasefire will remain in effect. And so, I'm very hopeful of the ceasefire, and I saw that it's going to be done in different phases, which I'm hopeful those phases work out. But yeah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous that somehow they'll get broken one way or another because there's these ceasefires. They're so complex. They require so many moving parts, and so I'm like I said, I'm all over the place when it comes to the ceasefire. But I'm hoping for the best.
How has the last 14, 15 months been? This has been ongoing for so long, and just the effects it's had on the Jewish community and the congregation. What's that kind of been like? What's that environment been?
Yeah, so after October 7th, 2023, Hamas did a lot of damage to Israel. But one thing that Hamas did is it really increased anti-Semitism across the world, including the United States. Anti-Semitism in the U.S. rose by 300%. That's huge. And so the Jewish community is feeling it. We're really feeling it. And so, that's why we're so hopeful by the ceasefire. We're hoping that the war in the Middle East will stabilize and negotiations will lead to a more stable area, because then our community can be more stable as well. So it's been rough. It's been a rough ride.
In your opinion, what role can religious leaders and communities play in fostering lasting peace and reconciliation in such a divided region?
I think that most religions abhor violence. Most religions support peace. That's really important here, right? With the Jewish community, for us, it's really important that the hostages, there's about 100 from what we understand, come home. But we also believe it's really important that the Palestinian civilians get the aid they desperately need as well. And so if we can, if religious leaders can support both those efforts, I think that would help stabilize the Middle East.
What are your thoughts on anyone in the Jewish community that may not agree about the ceasefire deal, or maybe aren't excited about the ceasefire deal? What do you say to that?
There's this joke where if you have two Jews, you have three opinions, right? So yeah, I imagine there are Jewish people who are not into it for the opposite opposing reasons. Maybe it's not hawkish enough, because Israel has to also release a number of prisoners, and that could be difficult for a lot of Jews to stomach or understand. So certainly, I don't think the entire Jewish community is going to agree on the ceasefire. The entire Jewish community doesn't agree on most things. You know what I mean? So we're all going to be watching and waiting and see what happens.
What are your thoughts on kind of interfaith communities coming together, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, just interfaith communities and coming together and having some kind of support with this? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so important. I think early in the, after the Hamas attacked Israel, myself and a member of the Muslim community, we wrote an op-ed together saying, this doesn't affect our relationship. It's really important. If there are people who are anti-Muslim or Islamic phobic out there, us Jews say that's not okay. We do not support that, and they're the vice versa. So we recognize this war is in the Middle East, and that war has spread out, culturally to other places. But we're also American, and we believe in this place as well, and what the American values hold for us. And so we're always trying to be supportive of other religions, and they've been very supportive of us.
And just what have you hearing? I know the news is fairly new, but have you kind of been hearing anything within the community? Word kind of spreads quickly. Alaska kind of seems a world away from where this is happening, but it's still very much affecting folks here and in the community as well.
Yeah, I've been hearing a sense of relief that we got to this point, and a sense of hope that we'll get farther and that the hostages will come home. That's what I'm hearing so far, but as you pointed out, it's just brand new, so I'm probably hearing a lot more throughout the day.
And lastly, is there anything else that you want to mention or add in regards to this topic, or just in general, that I didn't ask?
Well, I think I mentioned most of it. This whole the war in the Middle East has been such a hardship for the Jewish community across the entire world, right? Every Jewish community has a relationship with Israel one way or another, and so we've been hurt too by this. But also, as I pointed out before, the increase of anti-Semitism has been so complex for our community trying to navigate and understand. And so I think maybe all of us are hoping that through this ceasefire, we can come to sort of not only peace in the Middle East, but we can come to some sort of peace here in the U.S. and across the world for our Jewish communities.
So obviously talking about the breaking news that has happened today, so your initial thoughts on the Hamas-Israel ceasefire deal?
We're ecstatic. It's great news. It's long overdue. It's been just absolute devastation for the people of Gaza. They've just really decimated the civilian population. I think now that this is coming to an end, hopefully, investigations can take place, the truth can get out, the actual numbers. So we're very happy to get this news today.
What do you think this ceasefire means for the path toward peace in that region?
It depends. What is the most important thing, I think, for the Palestinians on the ground there, and this is actually what Hamas proved by their actions, was that there is not going to be peace without justice. Obviously, the Palestinians, they want to live in peace. They want to just have their daily lives. They don't want to live with oppression and just all the hardships that are forced on them. Because every person has a breaking point, and that's really what we saw on October 7th. I in no way support the actions of what Hamas did, but I do understand the desperation, the frustration, just the killing with impunity. Life in Gaza it's basically called an open-air prison, and that is what it is. Life is unbearable there, and they just reached the breaking point. So one of the reasons that they did this was to draw international attention to the situation, and I think that they were successful in that. And so we'll have to see what happens from here. If there are investigations, I believe the ICC has already issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu for war crimes. And if that goes forward, if there is a full investigation, and an investigation on both sides, that's really the only equitable, fair way to do it. The whole thing needs to be investigated. And whoever did commit war crimes, they need to be held accountable. That said, this was not a balanced fight. The majority of the victims are civilians, mostly women, children. And in Gaza, they don't have a military. For the past 20, 30 years, they've been under siege. They've had everything that comes and goes has been at the whim of Israel. And some really ridiculous things, you just can't get there. And their life has just been so hard, and that's why they do these, whatever they can. They don't have an air force, they no longer have an airport, they no longer have a port. It's all controlled by Israel. So if there is due process, if they hold war criminals accountable, then I am optimistic that this can go forward and there can be a peaceful resolution. But again, there will be no peace without justice. So that is the key.
I was going to say your thoughts, because they're planning to have the ceasefire kind of roll out in stages. What are your thoughts? Are you optimistic, cautiously optimistic, in that this will follow through, or because there's been ceasefires, in the past. How are you feeling going into this one and people celebrating and kind of having that weight lifted right now?
Cautiously optimistic. I think as long as there is a prisoner exchange, get the hostages back to Israel. I think that is extremely important, and I do support that. But then at the same time, there are a lot of Palestinians sitting in Israeli jails without charges, without convictions. They have children. Israel is one of the few countries that does jail children, even without charges. So basically a prisoner exchange. I think that has to be top on the table.
What are your thoughts about other communities of faith coming together, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and really kind of standing together when things like this are happening?
Anchorage has a really good interfaith coalition. The ICCA, Islamic Community Center, we have a very close relationship with Temple Beth Shalom and several churches in the area. We are a member of the Interfaith Council, and we have had so much support, and we also support the other faiths. After October 7th, Temple Beth Shalom, they did have a memorial. They had just a big get-together because so many of their members were, they had family in Israel, and some people maybe knew hostages. And a few of us from the mosque, we didn't want to inflame anything, but at the same time, we felt it was extremely important to show that we can be in complete opposition, say politically, but our friendship, our humanity has to come above this. And so we took part in the program that they hosted, and I'm really glad that we did, because we do have close personal ties, the Muslims and the Jews in Anchorage. And at the same time, though, obviously I can't speak from the Jewish perspective, but from the Palestinian perspective, this has nothing to do with religion. Before the creation of Israel, there were Muslims, Christians, Jews. They were all equal citizens. There was no animosity. The problem really started with the creation and the confiscation of land. So what you have now is one group that is a majority landowner, and they are pushing. Basically, they are the settlements in the West Bank, what's going on in Gaza, they are really squeezing the population. And so religiously, most Palestinians are either Muslim or Christian. A lot of people are surprised to hear that. Palestinians about 30% Christian. These are descendants from the original contemporaries of Jesus. These were the descendants of the original Christians. So the Christians and the Muslims in Palestine, they don't differentiate. Like I have a friend who she says for Eid, her friend and their family come and spend with her family. On Christmas, they would go spend with their family. There's not that distinction. Christians and Muslims, they're just Palestinian. And so this really has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. The problem is not with Jews. That gets oversimplified so often, and that is, if I can really say anything, that this is not a religious debate. There is no animosity against Jews. It is Zionism. That's the problem. The political movement that basically treats Palestinians like second-class citizens, that the forced diaspora. That's all a result of Zionism. So any criticism of Israel, a lot of times it gets labeled as anti-Semitic, but it's a sovereign state. They should not be above criticism. Policies and actions of a sovereign state, it doesn't really matter what religion, what the people are, that all has to be subject to criticism, to investigation. And it's just really oversimplifying it as trying to place religion in it at all as being okay, what am I trying to say?
Yeah, well, we can wrap. Is there anything else that you want to mention or add in regards to this subject, or, sharing the importance of others understanding the conflicts from, kind of coming from different perspectives?
Well, I do think one of the problems, really since the creation of Israel, there has been this positive feedback loop. Both sides blaming other for what's going on. So you have very, very harsh, draconian policies against the Palestinians. They live under this oppression, and it gets to a breaking point, and then you see something like firing rockets or October 7th. And then because of that, then Israel puts even harsher, like what they've done to Gaza. There's been, I don't know what the final numbers are going to come out, 80, 100,000 killed. But that positive feedback loop, it has to be interrupted. That's the only way that there is going to be peace. So I don't know how to do it. It's above my pay grade. But that is definitely my hope that the international community will be able to break it and really find peace and security for everybody in the region, because everybody deserves to live peacefully.
Thank you to our guest, Rabbi Abram Goodstein with Congregation Beth Shalom, and Heather Barbour, a family law attorney and a leader in the Arab community in Anchorage. And thank you for listening to In Depth Alaska. Please like and subscribe to this podcast.